My wife sent me a text at 11 how on a Tuesday night. 7 words. Don't come home tonight. I need space. I was sitting in the parking garage of a Marriott on South Tryon Street in Charlotte, still in my suit, holding the bag of Thai takeout I'd grabbed because I thought she might be hungry. The food was getting cold. I read the message 3 times, letting the words sink into the quiet of the car. I didn't panic. I didn't call her screaming. I simply typed back 1 word. Okay. Then I drove up to the hotel lobby, checked in, set an alarm for 5:30 a.m., and lay on top of the covers staring at the popcorn ceiling. I was entirely calm because I already knew something she didn't. It was a secret I'd been carrying for exactly 11 days. The next morning, while Renata was still asleep in the beautiful house we had built together in the historic Dilworth neighborhood, a new listing went live on Zillow. It had professional high-resolution photos, a comprehensive description, and a price tag listed 6 figures over asking. It detailed the 3 bedrooms, the 2.5 baths, the original restored hardwood floors, and the custom pergola I had built with my own hands the summer we moved in. She called me 47 times before 9 a.m. I let the phone vibrate against the breakfast table until the 48th call. Then I finally picked up. My name is Holden Crest. I'm 44 years old and I work as a real estate attorney in Charlotte, North Carolina. That means I know more about property law, deed transfers, financial disclosure, and listing agreements than most people ever want to learn. I've spent 17 years reviewing complex contracts, closing transactions, and advising clients on exactly what they own, what they owe, and what they are legally entitled to when a marriage completely falls apart. I never in my wildest dreams thought I'd need to weaponize that knowledge for myself. For 12 years, I was the kind of husband who genuinely thought effort was enough to sustain a marriage. I worked hard at the firm, I came home every night, and I showed up to every event. We went on mountain vacations to Asheville, and once took a massive trip to Portugal for our 10th anniversary. I thought that was what love looked like in the long run. Presence, consistency, and being a man who didn't disappear when things got boring. Renata ran her own interior design business out of a studio near Southend, and she was incredibly talented. She was the kind of person who could walk into a completely gutted room and immediately see exactly what it was supposed to become. She had fierce opinions about everything from paint colors to the exact angle of a sofa against a window. And I found it charming for 9 out of our 12 years together. The Dilworth house was hers in spirit, even if both of our names were printed clearly on the deed. She had designed every single square inch of it. The built-in bookshelves in the study, the kitchen island custom-made from a massive slab of Brazilian quartzite, and the master bathroom with a freestanding tub that cost more than my first car. I had written the checks and asked almost no questions, because watching her bring that house to life made her happy in a way I didn't fully understand, but was deeply grateful to witness. We didn't have children by choice, a decision we had made together in our early 30s, or at least I thought we'd made it together. Renata had been firm about it, claiming her work was her calling, and she couldn't give both a child and her clients what they truly deserved. I accepted that. Looking back, I realize I accepted a lot of things without ever looking underneath the surface. The first time something felt genuinely wrong was about 14 months before the night of the text. Renata had landed a major contract for a boutique hotel renovation in Noda, the vibrant arts district north of uptown Charlotte. It was the biggest project of her career, and she was electric with excitement. She started working late, taking calls at odd hours and texting constantly. I told myself I was proud of her, but the distance grew rapidly. She started going into her office on Saturdays, then Sundays. She completely stopped asking about my legal cases, which had always been our dinner table ritual. Then came the shift. I noticed she'd changed her phone passcode, replacing the same 4 digits she'd used since the year we got married. I only noticed because I picked up her phone to look at a project photo, and my muscle memory failed. I set the phone down and said absolutely nothing. That was the moment I started paying real attention. I am not a dramatic person. I didn't hire a private investigator or follow her car. I am an attorney. I think strictly in terms of evidence, and emotional suspicion holds no weight in a court of law. I simply started observing with the same clinical detachment I applied to my corporate cases. I watched the patterns, noted the discrepancies, and let time reveal the truth. The hotel project eventually brought a man named Sullivan Price into our lives. He was the lead architect on the Nodar renovation, a charismatic 40-year-old who had recently relocated to Charlotte. I met him exactly once at a project kickoff dinner. He was tall and soft-spoken, possessing the easy confidence of someone who had never had a door closed in his face. I watched him call Renata by a nickname I'd never heard, and she laughed at his jokes before he even finished delivery. I shook his hand, drove us home in total silence, and kept my guard up. The breaking point arrived in January, when I found a crumpled restaurant receipt in Renata's coat pocket while taking it to the dry cleaners. It was for a bistro on Park Road on a Saturday afternoon. 2 entrees, 1 expensive bottle of wine. Renata had told me that specific afternoon she was slammed at a design consultation miles away in Ballantyne. Standing in our kitchen holding that receipt, I didn't cry or scream. Instead, the quiet, practiced instinct of a man who protects people from broken agreements took over. Most people don't understand how real estate law works regarding marriage in North Carolina. It operates under equitable distribution, not equal distribution. That is not a minor technicality. It is everything. It means the court doesn't automatically split assets down the middle. It heavily weighs financial contributions, circumstances, and economic fault. I knew that a spouse who financed the home, maintained the property, and held the primary professional equity wasn't going to just lose half of everything to an unfaithful partner. I quietly called my colleague, Petra Nakamura, a ruthless domestic litigation attorney who handled high-asset divorces. I explained the situation in the same flat, organized tone I use for daily business. She asked me 3 targeted questions. I gave her the facts, and she told me to meet her that Thursday. The meeting lasted 2 hours. Petra mapped out my position, explained the exact documentation I would need to secure, and gave me a warning. Whatever you do, Holden, do not confront her until you are completely ready. The moment she knows you know, the clock starts running, and you lose the element of surprise. I wasn't ready yet. I needed 11 more days to build an airtight case. Those 11 days were the strangest, most agonizing days of my life. I went to work, reviewed title searches, and attended real estate closings while managing a massive emotional storm inside. I came home to a house that still smelled like Renata's expensive candles, ate dinner with her, and asked about her day. I have never felt more profoundly alone, yet I have never been more controlled. By the time those 11 days began, my financial audit was flawless. I documented that the Dilworth house was purchased entirely with my premarital capital and joint savings I could legally track. I proved that Renata's design business had operated at a significant loss for the first 4 years of our marriage, heavily subsidized by the income I generated. My name was first on the mortgage. The property had appreciated by nearly 60%, and under our state laws, her marital misconduct was an admissible consideration for asset distribution. I also had an unintended ally. Her closest friend, Darcy, texted me to ask if everything was okay because Renata seemed incredibly distracted and off. I politely told Darcy everything was fine, keeping my cards close to my chest. When the text finally arrived on that freezing Tuesday night, the trap was already set. I had spent the afternoon finalizing the next steps with Petra. The Zillow listing was prepared. A real estate photographer had already shot the house under a false pretense, and a trusted listing agent named Grant Whitfield was waiting on standby. Sitting in that Marriott bed with the Charlotte skyline faint through the glass, I sent Grant a text. Go ahead. When I finally answered Renata's 48th call the next morning, her voice was completely broken. She was sobbing, demanding to know why our home was listed on Zillow, screaming that her name was on the deed. I kept my voice entirely level. I told her I think she knew the financials better than that. A heavy, suffocating silence fell over the line. She whispered, "You knew. You've known for a while. Why didn't you say anything?" I told her the truth, because I needed to be ready. And since she had texted me at 11:00 p.m., telling me not to come home, I figured the conversation could formally start in the morning. I heard her breathing heavily, moving through the empty rooms of our house, a house that now had a public listing number attached to it. She asked where I was, and I told her I was staying at the Marriott until a legal framework was established. I advised her to retain a lawyer immediately, because Petra Nakamura was already moving forward on my behalf. Renata made a horrific guttural sound and whispered, "Holden, I made a mistake." I replied, "I know." So did I, several over a long time. "We can talk about all of them, but not today." Then I hung up. My hands were completely steady. The legal process that followed was a brutal, exhausting war. Renata hired a highly aggressive attorney named Philip Boggs, who argued that her interior design contributions created an intangible equity that bypassed the deed. Petra ruthlessly pushed back with the financial records, renovation invoices and bank statements I had spent those 11 days compiling. The Zillow listing stayed active for 31 days before we accepted a massive offer from a couple relocating from Raleigh. The house sold for a premium, and after the legal dust settled, the court awarded me the vast majority of the proceeds based on the undeniable financial documentation. Sullivan Price left. Charlotte, 4 months later when the hotel project pulled his contract due to the brewing legal scandal, destroying Renata's primary source of business revenue. I felt no joy in her financial struggles. I just felt an overwhelming sense of fatigue. People always ask me why I didn't just talk to her or confront her earlier. The honest answer is that confrontation in the moment of discovery is an emotional luxury that costs you your security. I've seen clients ruin their lives by screaming at the dinner table before securing their legal footing. I didn't confront Renata because I needed to protect the life I spent decades building. I needed to act from absolute clarity, not raw reaction. We signed the final divorce papers on a Wednesday afternoon in separate rooms. I drove back to my new apartment, ordered a pizza, and watched a baseball game I can't remember. I didn't feel relief or victory. I just felt like a man who had finally exhaled after holding his breath for months. Today my life looks very different. I live in an uptown apartment, run along the Greenway on weekends, and sleep in the dead center of a king-sized bed. Renata called me a few months ago to offer a real apology, admitting she had used the affair as an escape from a marriage she felt was narrowing. I told her I hoped she found peace, and for the first time the weight of the past felt entirely gone. Lately I've been getting coffee with a sharp litigator named Wren from my building. When I told her how I handled the Zillow listing, she smiled and called it the most attorney thing she'd ever heard. I took it as a compliment. I protected what I built. I survived the wreckage, and the world is finally moving forward again.